There we are. The button has been pushed. Here we are. Thank you for joining us, tuning in. Look who's excited on this screen. You know what the deal is. We're about ready to record episode 94. We're doing it, pushing along, episode 94. And to join us, somebody that has become a really, really close friend. We've compared notes often, right? We show up for and with each other. It's Alexis Ray. Thank you, Alexis, for being here. I'm so excited the day has come.
Wild horses couldn't keep me away, Josh.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. So I asked you before we went on where you are, and you said Knoxville, Tennessee, and you said, I like the way you put it. How did you put about the location?
I never thought I would live in the middle again, because I've always lived on the edges, whether it was Hawaii or Seattle or Rhode Island. I mean, Florida, I was always on the edges. And I once lived in Denver and I hated it. And I said, I'd never live in the middle again. But here I am 2.5 years into Knoxville, Tennessee, and love it.
I hear. I mean, there's Tennessee has a lot to offer, right? What's so good about Knoxville? What do you have going there?
You know what I like is that it's not like Florida, which is flat, hot, and humid. Tennessee is humid, but yes, but there's terrain, there's a lot of open space, and the weather pattern goes around us. It's like we have a magic bubble over us, and it slams Nashville. We watch it go by now, and it just, we get 4 seasons, and it's not horrible except for summer, but other. And the people are nice and the traffic's easy and life is good, man. It's almost like Finding Mayberry.
Wow. And I really love hearing you say life is good, because I know part of your story, but I'm excited to like really unravel and get into it. But goodness, life has not always been good.
Oh, no, it's not. It's really been a struggle to get here.
And we'll get to it. How long has it been good, do you say?
I would say I still have moments. Totally, like, I had my first childhood at 36. So that was 20 years ago.
What does that mean, your first childhood?
Well, I had to raise my twin brothers. I became a mini mom. And I really didn't get a chance because I was so burdened both with the responsibility and then later with the mental and emotional bag I was carrying. It took a long time to shake that off. But it would actually be in my mid 40s, another 10 years later, which is still 10 years ago. Yes, before I felt like I was a free spirit. I freed my spirit. I traveled, I did what I did. But as far as emotionally, it took a long time.
You know, part of my story, I'm going to be 45 this year, and I'm just now feeling like I'm getting it. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I am maturing. I guess there's, you could think you're mature, but I think there's always other levels. So, but I was very immature for a long while until finally I've grown up.
Yeah. That's awesome. And I'm glad that your kids caused you to do that.
That's the story. Me too.
My mom leaned on us instead, and she got to be whatever she was. It wasn't grown up though. So yeah, it could happen either way. And I'm okay with that. That's what our souls came to do. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm ready to hit record. I don't want to miss much more of this on the official podcast. Thank you, everybody, for joining us live. As always, you're part of the episode. You're part of the conversation. So any thoughts, ideas, comments, impressions, get them in the chat box. I read it in real time and love to see you participate. If you feel inclined and you want somebody that you know to participate, share it out. It's on my public profile, and we'll take it from there. Without further ado, we're going to get episode 94 of the Hidden Entrepreneur Show recorded with this beautiful guest, with this beautiful ray of light.
Thank you.
Right, Alexis Ray. We're going to talk about the significance, because that's obviously no accident.
Oh, it's quite the story.
Yes, can't wait. The name change story, right?
Yeah.
Good. Well, let's
it was destiny already.
Wow.
Great story.
Cool. We'll hear it. We're here to listen.
I'm so excited.
Good. Me too, Alexis. Here we
go. My face hurts from smiling already.
I love it. Here we go.
Yay.
Hey there, guys. Thanks for joining us. You're tuned right into the Hidden Entrepreneur Show. I am your host, Josh Carey. How do you go from a life absolutely full of chaos in all its forms, all starting from a very young age, to a life today filled with passion, direction, meaning, and of course, a ray of light? Our guest today has lived to tell it all. Meet Alexis Ray. She was pissed off for 5 years, depressed for 30, and thought all happy people were faking it. This former self-proclaimed hot mess is an ex-drug addict and dreadfully hopeless person who has turned her life around in every way. With Pippi Longstocking as her childhood inspiration, she sold everything in a yard sale and ran away. She was 26 at the time, and her bags have been packed for 20 years. This is a story you do not want to miss. Help me welcome my guest, my friend, Alexis Ray. How are you, Alexis?
Hi, Josh. I'm delighted to be here. I'm surprised my chair isn't floating. I'm like so excited.
Excellent. So good to have you.
Thank you.
You call yourself a former energy vampire, among other things. And while I know what that means in theory, I had to Google it to find the exact definition. And I want to read what the exact definition, as per Google, is of an energy vampire.
Okay.
It says energy vampires are emotionally immature individuals who have the sense that the whole world revolves around them. They are almost incapable of seeing things from another person's perspective.
It sounds like a narcissist to me. But
How do you, yeah.
No, I'm glad you looked that up, Josh. When you don't have a sense of yourself, like I didn't, I had gutter level self-esteem. I had, an external world that was beating the crap out of me in one way or another. There's nothing, you have nothing to give. And so you're needy. And I remember people paying me compliments and I would rebuke it just because I was desperate to hear it again. Please tell me again that I'm okay. And it sucked the life out of friends and the air out of the room. I wanted to be happy. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be liked. And I was none of those things. I was, but I couldn't see it. There were people around me that were like, you're really not as bad as whatever they would say. I couldn't hear it. Because so much of my self-esteem was missing. And it's almost like you have to have a catcher's mitt to receive these things. And mine had been either extracted or was never there. So
what was the basis for this low self-esteem? What happened?
I had a very difficult upbringing. There were probably some subconscious things going on, Josh. I was, my father tried to suffocate me with a pillow after smacking me so hard it hit left handprints. And my mother took me to the hospital after the visit with him. And that was when he admitted he tried to kill me. And his girlfriend saved my life. Those kind of things register real deep. And there was no way I knew it. But later in life, father denied it. Mother said, yes, it's true. So there was a lot of back and forth. My mom was actually very insecure. She had been diagnosed as what do they call it? Personality disorder, something like that. Anyway, she was not well. And she married someone who abused me. So yeah, there were a lot of things at play here. He was a bully and a narcissist, and she was mean and upset and hated her life and cursed us kids for being born.
Let's jump to the current day. I want to paint that picture.
Okay.
Fill us in on, because I know today you do a lot of good. You're an author, you're a speaker, you're a coach, a consultant, a podcast host, and then a former radio host and broadcaster. And I know you and I are going to compare notes in a little while. We both come from the entertainment industry,
Yes.
so you dabbled in that. So there's a lot to connect. But today, how do you define what you do? Who do you serve? What are you about?
Oh, thanks for asking that, Josh. I am about propping people up. I'm like a cheerleader, but I can't do a split. I got a heck of a pair of pom-poms back here. And I'm happy to just like, woo! I love to acknowledge and uplift others in their business, in the line of business. I happen to have a knack for headlines, taglines, messaging. And because I love broadcasting, it's an efficient way to get a message out. It parlays perfectly in the role of a podcast guest coach. So I absolutely enjoy turning people on to productizing their knowledge and monetizing their appearance as the podcasting world grows and grows and grows and grows. It's exciting to me.
And I know one of your programs is about be your own guru. Tell me about that. What is that?
Yes. So after 30 or 40 years of being really sad and depressed, and I don't want it to take that long for other people. I don't want it to take the rest of your life to have the best of your life.
Been there. Yeah.
Right? It shouldn't. And it took so dang long. And I thought I'd never, ever get out of that dark hole I lived in. And the hole that was in my soul. I mean, I'm literally like clutching my stomach. It was a terrible feeling. And so what I realized is I've come to distill down some 30 or 40 years of study, personal growth, development, spirituality, metaphysics, you name it. I was hungry for it. And have distilled it down into a dozen or so pithy one-liners. And these will get you through a moment, a day, a crisis. They are mindset resets, and they work like that. And I think it's just like, it's a crash course and almost like a referral list that you can look at. Okay, this just happened. Well, how do I look at this? Because perspective is everything. And being able to shift that perspective is like going from, a Fred Flintstone car to a 6-gear Ferrari. Let's go. Yeah.
I love that. What is your formula for change?
Well, it's 3 A's and a C. The first is that through awareness, because if you're not aware of something, you can't fix it, right? Through awareness and then acceptance. So if something in the past or someone in the past hurt me, I may never, ever get to forgiveness. I may not forgive them, but I can accept what happened. If I can accept that, I can move forward. And that is action. So awareness, acceptance, and action equals change. And if
that's something
what you want, then you adjust. Okay.
And that's something you've implemented in your life.
Yes, Josh. And this is vital. This is the first step. Step number one is, and I did this spontaneously, and I simply took a journal. I wrote at the top of the page, I believe, ... And for, 4 months, I wrote every freaking thought I had. I didn't know where they came from. I couldn't judge them. I didn't let anybody read it. But what I found, Josh, is that there were things buried in there, ideas, concepts that I had adopted that were like, they were meant to protect me back in the day. And then I realized, hey, you guys are outdated and you're kind of like old guard, and I need to gently fire you because you no longer apply. But they're still working overtime, like I had this belief, Josh, that all businessmen are spiritually shallow. That probably came from watching my dad. And because I was on a spiritual path, that kept me from going anywhere near being a business owner, right? Because I wasn't going to be spiritually shallow. So it was really limiting my progress. And I was spinning my wheels. And then came the time I interviewed a bunch of CEOs, and I realized they were very spiritual people. So I had to, cross that one off.
I get this whole story that we sell ourselves from a very early age. I sold myself a false story about me personally, that I was not valuable. Nobody cared what I had to say. Nobody wanted me around, and all the residual lines that come with that. And I perpetuated that in my head. And guess what happens when you do that? You find the people in and around you that are all too happy to say, okay, I'll help you perpetuate that story. And they do. And that's who showed up in my life, those kinds of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I had an opposite experience where my home life was like that. And I manifested friends that were very loving, and I wore them out. I wore them out like a freaking washcloth, and they quit me.
Tell me what that means. How did that happen? What did it look like?
What that looked like is I had a dear best friend, and I was hanging on to her coattails, like, for God's sakes, carry me with you through life, please, because I don't think I can make it. And she was a promising author and a speaker, and she was doing all kinds of things. And I was so desperate that I everything that she did, I just clung to. And and there were many times, well, several times, let's just put it that way, where I attempted suicide, cry for help. Because if a person really wants to die, they will, or it'll happen. If it's your time, you're going to go, period. I don't care. You can walk outside and pick up the mail and it's your time, done. Wow. You know, but in this case, I was a very, very distraught young lady, and I hung on to her like she was my life. And she said, I can't do this anymore. And she quit me. And I thought that I could hide it. I'm never very good at hiding my feelings. How I feel is right here. And people looked at me and said, you look like you just lost your best friend. And I said, yeah, she just quit me. And I was devastated. I was like, there it is. I'm nobody loves me. So there was that part. But she, I mean, God bless her. She hung in so long, so many years. And
I know. I know the theory of, being in a desperate situation of seeking approval and wanting others to like you, been there for the years, and you show up with that air. And secondly, I was showing up in those regards, and I'm sure you could relate too, where I was desperately looking for others to grant me the permission that I thought I needed from an outsider to do what I knew I was capable of, what I so desperately wanted to do. But for some reason, I wouldn't just make the decision myself and take that step. I needed either a colleague or even a stranger to say, yeah, you could do that. Go ahead and do that. Never came. So I never did it.
And I'm the opposite of you, Josh. I had people saying, girl, you got the world by the tail. It's your oyster, everything ahead of you. And I was just like, really? Can you freaking help me figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do with myself? First of all, I don't believe you. Could you say it again, please? Or I really would. I would deny compliments all the time because I was desperate to hear somebody that would love me in all my ugliness, in all the worst moments of rage and despair and a heap on the floor. And they would. And I would push them away, because I wasn't ready to accept it. I don't know what it sounded like to be loved. I don't know what the deal was. But I had people say, you've got everything available to you. Now, of course, I also had my father, my real father, in the background saying, you use bad judgment. I had my mother saying, from the time my birthday, my 13th birthday, you're going to turn into a selfish, self-centered little bitch. And that was how she treated me. So from that moment on, no matter what I did, I was damned if I do and damned if I don't. I couldn't make a decision in my favor because then I was selfish. If I didn't make a decision, then I was fickle. I mean, it was just like, just shoot me, please.
Wow.
Because, it was a real stymie.
So I want to hear how you got to this brilliant ray of light place today. So let's connect those dots. Take us back from the very beginning. What was life really like from a young child as Alexis growing up?
I have pictures of me when I was really still a happy kid, and I knew that there was a moment that my mom cared about me. That's the one photo I have. I've lost all the family albums. It's the one picture I have, and I see it every day. And it reminds me that there were good times, and I still remember those. What happened though, as life went on, is that her marriage to my stepfather was really a bad idea. And I felt like I was in the way. In fact, they made me feel that I was in the way. If it wasn't for you goddamn kids, I would hear lots of things like that. And my first cry for help, Josh, was overdosing on baby aspirin. And I took a lot of them.
What age was this?
Yeah, I was about 8 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
What were you crying for?
I really felt like I should not be there. And they made when you give a kid any wish you want, mine was to be invisible. Because that was how I felt like I was always in the way, unless I was serving the need of taking care of my little brothers who were born. The twins were born when I was 7. So I was a year into being mini mom. But there was still, I would get home from school, and if anybody said, like, oh, your glasses are funny, and I was looking for sympathy, I would get bullied. Let me see some really big alligator tears. Let's see you really cry. I was absolutely tormented by my stepfather and from my mother. And then if I cried about it, then I was in trouble for that. I mean, so what happens is when you can't express how you really feel, you turn it in on yourself, and it becomes self-loathing and self-hatred of a magnificent value. That's all you have. You can't turn it out anywhere else. And so it turns on you, because narcissistic parents and bullies will make you feel that it's your fault for their being unhappy. And that's what happened to me. Yeah. So no doubt by 8 years old, I was already like, I wish I was dead.
Tell me the other side of that incident. So you make it through the aspirin incident, and now life is going on for you. What happens then?
So what had happened was I would pack my bags, and I remembered the aspirin incident where they said, just go to bed through the bedroom door. They didn't give a shit, really, frankly. Sorry, but they didn't. And I thought, well, if I run away, then I'm just going to be in trouble for that once I finally come home. So I set my sights on someday, and I would read Pippi Longstocking and other stories of adventure. And I was like, dear God, help me get out of here. I don't know how this is going to happen, but I knew the what. I knew I wanted adventures somehow. And fast forward a little bit, I cheated my way through high school half the time. In senior high school, I just was desperate not to get in trouble for grades. At least I could cover my ass on that, that I wouldn't be, straight A's with no matter what it took. I cheated. And when I got to college, I wasn't ready for it. I studied pre-med because I loved chiropractic, and I failed, epic fail. I ended up making better Rice Krispie treats than grades. And I ended up going to culinary school at Johnson & Wales in Rhode Island, where my real dad said, come on, I got time to be a dad. And in that first trimester, I said, Dad, I should be in film school. I don't like this at all. This is awful. He's like, you'll always have work. I said, have you ever worked on a hotline, Dad? Have you ever worked in food service? It's awful. I want to be in film and television. I'm drawn to media. He's like, you will finish. And so I did. 4 years and 3. I couldn't get out fast enough.
So I know you and I have compared notes on this before. So you had your eyes set on film and media. I have my own reasons why I went into that direction. Why did you go into that industry?
Initially, that's a great question, Josh. Initially, and I didn't realize why at the time. And this is really important.
Of course. Yeah.
I realized later that it was exactly like my family, that it was criticism. Be perfect, try harder. You'll never be good enough.
True.
A couple of us might love you, but we're not going to tell you. You're only as good as your last performance. What did you do for us today? It was just like so familiar to my childhood. But I loved it because in the training that I had, acting is the art of being real. Otherwise you're acting. That was what I learned from the director. And I love that. And I love behind the scenes stuff. I love production. I love how things are made. And I was intrigued by it. And I wanted to shoot documentaries, real life. I don't want to be somebody's puppet on a string. And so I was really drawn. I also like that it's efficient. Multimedia is an efficient way to get a message out. And I knew that someday, somehow, some way, there was going to be some reason. And I don't even know how I know that. How does any of us know what is our path? It just shows up. It tells us, it draws us.
So in this era of your life, now you're sort of on your own, you're living a dream, you're making things work. Was there at least a sense of relief from when you were under your parents' roof?
No. I would come home from school, and there would be fear running from my tailbone up through my head every single day. And if you've never felt that sense of fear, it's hard to understand. It's hard to describe. But I never knew what page of wacko I was going to walk into.
What page of wacko? I was going to say, what were you afraid of?
Who knew?
Yeah.
It didn't matter. It really didn't matter. Wow. And I couldn't stand it anymore. I wrote a note because I was a good kid. I was like, dear mom, I'm going to go stay with Barb and her mom. Her mom says it's okay. I left a note about, I'm going to go stay over here for 3 months so I can at least finish high school with the people that I've been going to elementary school with. And I went to Barb's house, and her mom said, sure, no problem. And within a day, my mother had Dobermans and the sheriff at the door and said, you are coming with me, or you're going to juvie. She pulled me out. The next day I was forced. She said, you're going to your father's house. I said, does he even know I'm coming? No, it doesn't matter. And you'll leave with the clothes you have on your back. And so I had a pair of overalls that I made in home ec, and I piled a bunch of outfits on underneath it. And I wore my overalls and I got dropped off on my dad's doorstep to attend the last 3 months of my high school years at a school that was very snotty and very snooty and very rich. And I wore my brother's clothes to make it. And my dad, he just had to deal with it. My mother, he divorced her when I was 2 for a reason, you know, and I was a product of her, you know, her stuff. So he had a hard time with me.
Behind closed doors, in your isolated space, whenever and wherever you found that, how did you talk to yourself of the future? Did you say, hey, I'm just going to leave this behind in X number of years and this will all be like, did you still saw the green pastures at some point? You said, I just got to get through this. How did you survive mentally?
No, honestly, that's a great question, Josh. Nobody's ever asked me that before. I don't know how I got through, honestly. It was probably going to concerts, getting high, and having some good friends, because that balanced out. Even though I caught a bunch of flack once I got home, at least it balanced out and made me feel like somewhat normal. Going to shows, music was always my thing. But I don't know how I didn't give up. Those stories of traveling nurses kept me alive. Like there was a series called Cherry Ames, traveling nurse, Cherry Ames, such and so nurse. And I thought, well, in this era, by the way, this is when a woman still could become a secretary, a nurse, or join the service. And so I was gunning for the service because I wanted to get the hell away from wherever I was at. And so that hope kept me going, that somehow, some way, someday there'll be I don't care what it is. I've got to get out of here. I just didn't know how. I just knew the what. You know.
So was your first outlet going west and entering the entertainment industry?
Not at all. No. I graduated culinary school and I was so excited. You know, I was playing like Whitesnake. Here I go again on my own. And my little brother's like, you go, sis. My Jimmy Buffett lifestyle, working as a chef on a yacht. I had no idea when that yacht hit high water, open water, that I was going to be the seasick chef. It was horrible. Oh my God. Like I was freshman of the year. I couldn't believe I won accolades. I couldn't even hold a knife the year I started culinary. But I ended up doing very well. I enjoy high-end food. Food is art. I love it. And so I got this job on a yacht that I'd once been a guest. We hit the open seas, sick as a dog. I turned out that I was working for as they called him, the asshole of the seas. On a 92-foot private yacht that felt like a floating prison. Wow. So yeah, there went that. I bailed out of that and then ended up back in Florida working for Marriott, which I said I would never do. And
corporate?
Yeah. So
okay.
Yeah.
And then yeah.
That was when I decided. I heard one of my chums from culinary had taken a job in Alaska, and I got a bit of travel envy. And I said, I'm out. I'm doing it. And I learned early on from an experience in Rhode Island, don't tell people everything. So, because they'll talk you out of it. They will. I was wanting to work for the John Denver Foundation. I was like, I'm going to work for World Peace up in Colorado. I wanted to see mountains, you know. And they're like, you can't do that. You'll die. You don't have a job. And I tossed that ticket in the trash.
Oh, you believed it. Yeah.
I did. So the next time that happened, Josh, I said, look, I'm going to California where there's a lot of restaurants and I have a lot of relatives. And 2 out of 3 were true. There are a lot of restaurants and I do have relatives, but I was going to Alaska. And I just knew it was better. I just knew it was better to just kind of on that one. And off I went.
So then how did your time as a performer begin?
Oh, that was fun. When I finally got through the Alaskan adventure, I landed in Seattle and I went directly to PBS and I talked my way into this gig. And I learned that, and I was an editor for a film that they'd done all over the world. It was really great. But what I learned is PBS is always begging for money. If they can ever do their next job, they always hope. And I was like, oh, this sucks. I'm not doing this. I ended up on the set of Bill Nye the Science Guy as a production assistant. And at the time, Bill and his wife and 2 of us were shooting in a tiny little apartment room above traffic. And we'd have to wait till the traffic went by for the sound to be able to roll tape again and make the show happen. It was fascinating. And then I ended up as a chef on Northern Exposure. So I got exposure. Yeah, which is filmed in Kent, Washington. What a great show. So I got my taste of production. I literally just I just applied for things. I mean, Craigslist was the deal back then, and I know how to put words together. And I would apply for these jobs and be a production assistant or makeup or wardrobe or chef. I just wanted to hear back to one, people, or that's a wrap. And I don't know what drew me to do it, but I had to. And then there was a search for answers, and so I created my first cable TV show of interviews called Living Dreams. And I wanted to know, how in the heck do you know what to do with your life? And that was, community access, cable, free TV. And that started my passion and love of interviewing. And it has never stopped.
What did we learn? That's a fascinating question. How the heck do you know what to do with your life? So many of us are asking that, have asked that, will ask that again. What is the answer?
Well, Josh, I'm glad you asked. What I learned from the CEOs, I said, how in the heck did you figure out what to do and what to do every day? And now this is back when it wasn't cool to say intuition or whatever. And they were like, well, and they hedged a lot. It's a feeling. What's it feel like? Because I got a lot of feelings, like, which one am I supposed to listen to? Could you please help me sort this out? And they said, well, it's a feeling that something's right. And it may defy logic to other people. And they're really like nervous talking to me. And I said, please tell me some more. And they said, well, it's kind of like a big yes inside. I said, a big yes. And they said, yeah. You know how when you're looking for a parking spot and you find it leads you to, it's a yes. It's that thing inside. It's a yes. So all the different words that they used, I just summed it up as the big yes. And that was the name of my next talk show, The Big Yes. And I interviewed people that were living their big yes.
I find that it's almost the two steps, because somebody listening or somebody on this path could acknowledge that and say, yeah, that's how I know I'm on the right path, or if and when I'll be on the right path. But then it's a whole other thing to step into that path.
It really is. Yeah. No, you've got a great point there. And so when your brain is just filled with chaos, it's very hard to sift out the noise. It really is. And especially if you've had the self-esteem crap kicked out of you, you don't even trust your voice. And that was a process. It wasn't like overnight. I was just like, oh, okay, I know exactly what to do, because I didn't. And I thought, well, wow, maybe I'm just like doomed to the life of an explorer. Maybe Pippi Longstocking and I were drawn together for a reason, because I'll always be an adventurer, always beginner level, always, the new kid on the whatever block. And maybe that's just my path. Maybe I'm just supposed to be like that. There'll be no specialty. Maybe it's just exploration. I don't know. All I know, Josh, is that if I don't listen to that still small voice, which can still be a small voice, I regret it. And I believe that underneath it all, guys, and if you're listening and you're like, just filled with chaos in your head and your heart and your ears, there's going to be that it's a knowingness. It's small. But if you take a baby step in that direction, another baby step will feel right, and you'll be guided. You'll be divinely guided and protected. You've made it this far. There's still fog in the mirror. There's a reason you're here. Trust the voice. It will lead you, and it really, really will turn out to be a big yes.
I agree completely. In fact, I've lived all of that, for 40 plus years. I was resisting all of my power and ability, all the yeses that were coming up. I wasn't even confused. It wasn't like, oh, I don't know what to do. I knew exactly what to do, but I was scared out of my mind to do any of it. So I made up every excuse. I kept perpetuating that false story. I kept hiding behind fear and allowing others to give me the reason why I shouldn't, couldn't, or wouldn't do it. And life moved on. And then behind closed doors.
Why did you do that? Did you have parents that were knocking the yes out of you?
Well, of course. And I allowed that to happen. And I showed up for everybody to knock the yes out of me. Wow, so I had that. But the whole struggle was that behind closed doors, when I was alone, I then realized, you know what, I am, why? And then it would cause all this anger and resistance and frustration, because I knew what I was capable of. I knew what I wanted to do, what I should be doing, what I could be doing, but I wasn't doing, because I couldn't neglect this story that I perpetuated. I certainly couldn't step out of this persona that I allowed others to label me and define me as. So, okay, I guess I just got to keep doing this. And, it's miserable.
It is. And you wonder, who am I going to be next? Who am I going to be? I was so angry for so long, and that was my identity. And I know you can understand.
Go ahead.
Yes. And you have to, guys, for just a second, it's kind of like you're holding a vase and that's who you are. And you have to set it down. And there's a moment in between where the big urn is and you're heading towards it. But there's this moment, there's this void. Stay with it. Because earth shattering identity crisis 3 times. I couldn't have told you how to cross the street. I didn't know anything. Gone. Everything was gone. It was spiritual. I don't know, something happened, but there's an identity that we attach to. And it's like, oh my God, who am I going to be if I don't act like this? Who am I going to be otherwise? Yeah. There's a reward for being depressed, suicidal, needy. And I don't mean rewards. I mean that there's a feedback, there's a system that happens, and that's your life. And you know that life. I've been in homeless shelters. I've slept behind a sofa and called that bed. I didn't necessarily want that for myself. And crazy as it sounds, it was a big yes at the time, which is really wacko, but that's another story.
Tell me about, speaking of identity,
Yes.
Tell me about the name change. How and when and why?
Man, when I was little, so my birth name on birth certificate is Lori. And I would change my name on papers in school. And I would say, Lorinda, I want to be Lorinda. But so my family name at home, because my mother's name was Lori too, was Sissy. And the only time I heard Lori was when I was in trouble. And it was said with so much hatred. And I just I don't want to be that. That's not who I am. And I would change it to Cindy. And the teachers would have turned the paper and they're like, that's not your name.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Lori, leave me alone. Well, in the course of doing the Big Yes interviews, I went to visit Dr. Lee Poulos, a parapsychologist at the time, which was really weird to people. He's doing visualization and making people heal from cancer. And he's kind of different. Well, he was amazing. And I was interviewing him in his place. And he said, I want to show you something called muscle testing. Kinesiology was the word he used. And he said, that means that your body won't lie. It'll tell you the truth about anything. And I was like, I'm game. Let's go for it. And he said, stick out your arm. We're going to test some normal things that you test for a yes or a no that are truths. So I know what the measure is, yeah. Right? I stuck out my arm and he said, say your name. And I said my name and my arm fell like a noodle. I couldn't resist him to save my life, Josh. My arm fell. And I was like, hang on, wait a minute. That's my name. That's a truth. That's my name. It's on a birth certificate. And he said, no, apparently it's not. Let's try it again. I said, okay. I stuck out my arm and he did 2 fingers, little pressure, boom. I couldn't resist him ever at all. And I kind of recoiled and I was like, what the hell? And he's like, apparently that's not your name. I was like, this makes no sense at all, but I'll still have you on my show, but you're going to be a call in. I don't want to be around you. I was scared of him. Well, it wasn't, I don't know how much longer, a year later, maybe. It was August. My birthday had passed in June. And I was like, I was 30 or 31, which is a special era in our lives. I didn't know at the time. And I was so disappointed that I hadn't heard from my parents. Once again, birthday passes and I was babysitting and thank God the toddler was inside in the house, far in the house. I was out the back in the fire pit and I was crying and I was like, I'm so sick of this. And I remember a story about a brother and sister who were awarded a divorce from their parents who were proven to be abusive and horrible people. And this was a landmark case. And that stuck in my head. And then I remembered a chapter of a book in which the Aborigines, this woman, this American, ended up with them. And she's like, hey, this is so cool. They changed their name according to the gift they bring to the tribe. And I was like, what? So if you're really good, Josh, at, let's say hunting, you would call yourself Hunter. That's your name. That's your gift you bring to the tribe. And let's say later in life, you feel like you're a great hunter and they'll celebrate and probably dance around a fire and say, your new name is Great Hunter and later maybe seamstress. It doesn't matter. It keeps going. They don't care. Whatever gift you bring to the tribe is your name. And I remembered other metaphysical readings in which they said, your name it matters. And so all these things are sifting down. So was Dynasty, the show Dynasty at the time. And I'll tell you why that matters. So all these things sift in, and I'm crying, and I'm like, I think I'll divorce my family. And I write out this divorce decree. I hereby divorce myself from my family. And I was like, well, what do people do now? And I was like, well, they burn shit. So I threw it in the fire pit. And I'm watching it burn, and I'm really grateful the toddler's still asleep, because the babysitter's in the backyard, crying and burning stuff. And I watched the edges curl, and I didn't feel any better. And I thought, well, now what do I do? This didn't cure everything. I thought it would. And then I remembered the stories, the Aborigines, all the different stories. I didn't think about Dr. Poulos and the arm thing. That wasn't in my mind. And I remembered that with the metaphysical studies, that Ray is information, light, enlighten is information. And as messed up as I was at that time, I had a feeling that I was supposed to be a beacon of light and information. And it was a real far reach, Josh. Let me tell you, it's almost presumptuous or precocious for me to have thought that. It didn't fit at all. I was trying so hard to be a happy person, but I wasn't there yet. And so I thought, well, I've always hated my last name. People mess it up. It was Gist, and I would have to spell it G-I-S, like in Sam T. Gist, like the gist of the story. I had a brownie troop leader who said, I'm calling you Gish. I said, wait, why? Because I like the actress Lillian Gish, and that's what I'm going to remember you by. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm 7. Why can't you at least work with me on this? It was the worst name on the phone, and I hated it. I knew I'm still a bottom line person, because if you pronounce it gist, like the gist of the story, right, it's still who I am. And that doesn't go away. But anyhow, I thought, well, Ray, R-A-Y. Yeah, that'd be easy. Nobody's going to mess that one up, right? And then I said, if I ever had a daughter, I would have named her Alexis. And I didn't know why. I was drawn to the name, and Dynasty was popular, but it had finally faded away. So Alexis Carrington didn't have that bad of a, vibe, but still the meaning behind things really has always mattered. So I went in the house, baby's still asleep, grabbed the dictionary. There was no internet yet, guys. And I looked up Alexis, and it came from Alexander the Great, and it means helper of mankind. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna call myself Alexis Ray, and I'm gonna sign it A.Ray, and I'll always think of light, because even if the rest of the world doesn't want to reflect who I am, at least I can remind myself that this is who I am and the name I want to at least grow into somehow. Wow. And I went about and changed it.
That's beautiful. Certainly you've grown into it, and the world is reflecting that back, pun intended, right?
Yes.
I want to talk about a couple of things. If you don't mind, I want to get a little more personal for a minute. You have no children, right? And were you ever married?
Yes, actually, I did. I married an Aussie at age 47, and on our honeymoon, I started to feel the effects of domestic violence, and within 5 days, our marriage went to hell in a handbasket. So yeah.
What about the children route? Was that a deliberate choice? Was it just life circumstances choice? How do you look back on all that?
I decided that I wouldn't have a child unless I would undid everything my mother did. I didn't want to become my mother to a child, and I didn't know if that would ever undo itself. There were several times in my life when I've been pregnant, but the circumstances weren't right. Wow. And I said, no, you got to go, and literally willed it away. You can do that. So I just decided, okay, if it's not this time, then I'm okay with that. I know that I want to be responsible as a parent would be responsible, and maybe it's not this time, and I'm okay with that. It makes me available for other kids and other opportunities and on a bigger scale. So and there's so many kids. If I were in a marriage, like a real, like, we love each other for real and we're not beating each other up kind of relationship, wow. Yeah. I would have adopted, because there are that many children out there in the world that are still already here who need love.
So we heard we heard where you were, what your upbringing in life was, circumstantially, how you survived all of that. Now you're here today. Tell us about the gradual shift and change to this point. Was it the name change that started putting you on the better path? What was in place? How did all that unfold?
I started putting myself on a better path when my mother put Jonathan Livingston Seagull in my hands, and I was 21. I hadn't seen her since she kicked me out at 15, and I saw her for a visit, and that book changed my life, and it showed me that there are new things, new possibilities, a different way that your past doesn't have to equal your future. And so really it started back then, Josh, and it preceded the literally stumbling over a cassette tape that was an Anthony Robbins cassette tape, and literally stumbling.
Yeah.
It's somebody's house, and it was a really weird scenario that I ended up there. But okay.
Or is it? Right.
Right. And I said, okay, I was so grateful. I said, whoever listens when we say these things, I was like, someday I want to help as many people. No, scratch that. I want to help more people than Tony Robbins has, because I'm so grateful that I don't have to live the rest of my life as doom and gloom Deborah, Debbie Downer.
Yeah.
And so it has been a process and a progress of, and it continues to be. I still
Absolutely.
Gosh, there's still these moments where,
So what was then, what kinds of things did you implement? Did you put in place? Did you replace? Did you do to get where you are today?
I went through some forms of therapy. I had a couple of good therapists. For the first time in my life, I felt heard. And it's probably why I'm in the business of recognition, Josh.
I love that.
Honestly, it transformed me, and I became that person for others, like a confidant. I became a confidant for others who thought they needed to, I don't know, change their sex or whatever it was to be accepted to wear women's clothes. It was a guy. I get it. I became a very accepting person. And so much of that, because I wasn't, everything I was just, despised and cursed at my upbringing. And so I became the polar opposite. That was my first move out, Josh. Anything that I saw was being done, I'm going to do the opposite. And I realized it was an extreme of the pendulum, but all I knew was I don't want this. And sometimes all you know is what you don't want. And that has value. That has a lot of value. You may not know what you do want, but knowing what you don't want more of has just as much value.
It's a starting point.
Yes. And taking that inventory, the I believe inventory, holy crap. When I realized how much was in there that wasn't serving me anymore, and that then the power of beliefs, and I could adopt something else new and literally remake myself from the inside out. Wow. That was awesome.
I love the idea how you put it, that you were finally being heard, and that's why you're in the business of recognition. And really, on such a fundamental human level, isn't that all we are after? Moment to moment, day to day, isn't that it? Like, if you can go about your business knowing that that's what you want, that's what others want, there could be such beautiful connections and relationships.
Yes.
Wow.
So
So the whole basis of my brand, The Hidden Entrepreneur, of course, was founded on the idea that I was hiding in utter fear, hiding all of my power and ability in exchange for perpetuating that label and that story. Tell us about a time in your life, perhaps recently, perhaps not, your choice, when you were in utter fear, hiding, but you knew you had to work through that, and you got through that.
Wow. I don't, that would have been a long time ago. I think you just floored me with that question. In utter fear, that level of fear was I left that behind when I got out of my mom's house, or she helped me get out. That hasn't been the case in a very long time. But I could tell you a time. Yeah, I would have found myself in an alley Okay, so I had I had some moments where I've been part of the street life, and yeah, and it wasn't a bad thing. But I would run across or run into some what felt like pretty treacherous people and moments, and it mattered because I'd be by myself. It mattered how I came out, how I showed up. It mattered. And I don't know if, this is kind of what you're going for, but I think these moments where I was able to pretty much, you know, downshift a lot, and like I'd run into a bunch of Mexicans, and they'd be like, hey, kind of threatening, and I'd just be like, "Como se dice what the fuck in Espanol?" And they'd be like, "Ay, guapa." And for those of you who don't know what that means, Josh can tell you. I would disarm them with humor. And that wasn't not being myself, but I sure as hell wasn't showing the fearful girl in an alley against 6 guys. And I never, ever got into any problems. It was those moments of being able to adapt, swoop, switch, right there, be right there with them. And I don't have any judgment on people. So I didn't respond to their, threatening. I'm not doing it.
Wow.
It wasn't always like that, though.
Looking back on where you've come from today, is there or was there a level of shame that you had to work through?
What I heard from someone was it was guilt that I was carrying. And I didn't understand that because I was trying so freaking hard, Josh. I just wanted my mom to love me. And it was always be perfect, try harder. You're never going to make it. You're never going to be good enough. You might win some moments of love, but no, you fucked up again. I'm going to, punish you some more for some unspoken rule that you broke. Wow. I mean, it was just, fuck, So I didn't have shame over that, but I was made to feel guilty for everything. I was blamed for everything. If I did feel shame, it was later because when my stepfather molested me, I thought that's how you were supposed to be. And I was that way inappropriately in other situations in life. So there was some of that, but honestly, it wasn't a lot. Just because I wasn't accepted for who I was, there was definitely just the very being that I am is not okay. And, it was like wrong to be alive. That's what I've had to come through. What
are your friendships or your personal relationships like today?
I have wonderful friends. I have long-term friends. I've had long-term friends recently just disappear, like quit. And I guess, when they start saying that poem, there's a reason and a season, but it's like, you're going to reason and season me. Okay. All right. Acceptance is the key to peace. I accept it for what it is. There are people around, but mostly I'm so independent, Josh. I've gone to concerts and I've lived my life. I've just by myself, but I always have somebody really close. And I have a couple of those people right now girlfriends that I absolutely adore. And the feeling's mutual. Yeah.
Looking back on a younger version of yourself, what conversation would you have with that person?
Yeah, it would have gone a different way recently if you'd asked me that a year ago. A year ago, I would have said, you're not as bad as you're made out to feel. Hang in there. It'll be okay. But now what I would say is all of this was designed even before you were born. All of this was designed for your soul's growth. And the players that are part of this stage show are to be freaking congratulated. Thank you. You did an amazing job, Mom. You were such a bitch. You were so horrible. And I managed to come back around and really build up strong and rebalance whatever the heck my soul decided to do this time because it needed to. And I accept all of it. And that's true freedom.
gosh, that's so amazing and beautiful and brilliant. And yes, you accept all of it. That's the goal. I spent so long resisting all of it. And now I'm at a point where I'm like, I have forgiven people, which, that's all part of it too. You have to come to a genuine place of forgiveness for no matter what people did. You're not forgiving them for what they did. You're forgiving you to move on, all that stuff, right?
Yes and no, Josh. I mean, when you really, really get to the point where you realize it was all sort of an orchestrated dance before you put on a pair of pants in this lifetime, is that there's not even a reason to forgive. You're
Go ahead.
actually, there's no wrong done. And I know that's a really hard concept.
Wow. Go ahead.
And it'll make some people mad. And I know
Go
it made
ahead.
me mad too. It made me really mad to think that. And I look around at me and I think, people were saying like, oh, your parents did the best they could. I'm like,
Yeah.
there's no way you can say that that's the best you can do when you're abusing a child. There's no way that's okay. So don't say that to me. Don't you ever say that to a person. They did the best they could. No, they did what they did. It is what it is, and it is what it ain't. So let's just move on from there, because there's no comfort in those words at all. Guys, if you don't know what to say, then say nothing, because that's not comforting. But I move forward from that is it's really hard sometimes for me to know, like, how could that possibly be what a soul came to experience? But if I look at it that way, if I really look at it that way, I feel badly for my mom. I feel badly for my dad. I see what their struggles were. But this is a different kind. I'm not taking care of them anymore. I'm not making excuses for them anymore. It's completely different. And I look at every single person around me and say, okay, they're on a trip and I don't understand what it is. I had a friend call me once, Josh, and she was ready to kill herself. And I was like, well, the roles are reversed for once. It's usually me making that call. And she's, and she sobbing. And I said, honey, I don't know what your soul came to experience. All I can say is, I would miss you. I don't know if this is what you're supposed to do. I don't know. I'm not going to judge it. I would just really miss you. And she stopped crying, and that never happened. But to really genuinely look around, instead of looking at people going, well, you have bad energy, that's why you're going. No, freaking don't judge them. Don't spiritually shame people. You don't know why they're going through what they went through, why that accident happened. You don't know. Shut up. Just accept them for the moment and where they're at and how they're going through it, and let that be okay. Because I believe every one of us came here with some sort of soul goal. And I think the goal of our soul is to rebalance or experience something that we decided to do. And maybe we don't remember what that is, but okay. Let's just follow the big yes, because it'll lead us to those moments in which we can have that, we did it, that freedom.
What an example. Are you spiritual or religious in any ways today?
Spiritual. But I guess it depends on how you define it, Josh. I couldn't quote something out of any book I've read, whether it was the Bible or, Bringers of the Dawn, metaphysical books. But I've had genuine firsthand experiences with Jesus and an angel. So
tell me more. What? Tell me.
Right. So thank goodness we were dropped off at any freaking synagogue or church that would have us on Sundays. I realize now that's because my mom and stepdad he was a drug dealer and they were doing their stuff. Fine. We got out of the house.
So there's that.
Right. And so I got this mixture of messages but basically as a child, I'm looking at the bottom line is there's a force that's bigger than me. It hears me when I say prayers. And I'm going to go to heaven because I'm a good little girl. Now I remembered all those things mostly. Well, there was a particular time in which things weren't so good in life, and I really needed to know that there was something else there. And I'm laying in my bed in Florida, and it said it's a hot night. There's no wind, and I decided to test the theory.
How old were you here?
I was 11.
Okay.
Yeah. And I said, Jesus, if you exist, make the curtains blow. And I waited and the curtains blew. I said, oh, that's just a fluke. Do it again. 3 times I did it. The curtains blew and I was like, rightio. Well, about a year later, I was in the ocean and it shouldn't have been. And some waves took me out and I was literally drowning. And I remembered that, what happens is there's your life in the tunnel and the light and all of that happened. I was 12. And I was scared at first. And so for anybody who's ever been afraid of dying, don't be, because honestly, what happens next is you pull away. You don't have the experience of your body anymore. It's really wonderful and comforting. It's really easy to do. And you don't even have to do anything. It's just what happens. And that's what was happening to me. So I went from struggling to get up from these waves and a face full of sand and salt water. I was drowning. And the tunnel was there and I saw my little 12-year-old light at my life. And I was like, oh, and it was all off to the right. And I was like moving towards this light. And I was so happy. And then all of a sudden, and somebody, now the beach was closed. This shouldn't have happened. There was a hurricane over Cuba. There was nobody at the beach but my brother, myself, and the lifeguard. And they were out of sight. Somebody pulled me up, took me to the shore. For all intents and purposes, for the tunnel, the light, the whole pulling out of your body, I should have needed resuscitation too, but I didn't. And they sat me down on the edge, right by on the shore, and made sure I was okay. I coughed a little bit, surprisingly, caught my breath. Yep, I'm okay. I'm okay. And they said, okay. And they just walked down the beach and disappeared. Gone. And that was when I realized I almost died and got scared. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I was going to ask you, I want to hear, further, what do you believe happens when it's all over?
I believe that energy transmutes into another level, or we don't, as my friend used to say, you drop the meat. But our presence is still there. And I really believe that's the case. My mother has proven it. I mean, she went on to study and become a medium, not a large, but a medium. Yes. Yeah.
Get it? Yeah.
Yeah. So I've had a lot of exposure to the presence of spirits after people pass away. Over the holidays, when my dad died, I said, please leave me pennies. And it took him 2 years, and I found pennies all over the house right around his birthday this year, which is New Year's Eve. And there were pennies everywhere, and there never should have been. There's a lot that's going on that I know we're still here. I know we're still around. I know it. I just know it.
What's left for you? What do you have your eyes on going forward that hasn't been manifested yet?
I'm so excited about that. Thanks for asking. So it's not a far reach for me to consider being on the Ellen show, because, I've been on Tyra and Steve Harvey, and, those things were just meant to be. Well, this is the next step. I want to have the Midlife My Ass tour. Midlife, I'm just getting started, and it's me, a co-leader, and 8 women, and we're going to do a bucket list adventure tour.
Love it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we're going to send clips of our adventures, because I want to encourage them. Look, TikTok, babe, we don't know what we got left. Let's go do this. We'll make it no matter what it is. If anybody is proof of that, it's me. Come on, let's go. And let's go do this bucketed list, whatever it is. And maybe each one of them will have their own idea of what we should do. And we're just going to go. And we're going to have like a road show, literally a documentary. Maybe it's the documentary I've always wanted to make. And I want to send clips to the Ellen show and say, hey, look, we're over here. Look, we're hang glide, whatever we're going to do. I don't care. So that using multimedia, television, for the purpose of broadcasting a massive message of positivity, inspiration, and adventure spirits.
It's absolutely brilliant. I'll be on the front lines cheering that along the way.
Thank you, Josh.
The life you've led is, my goodness, magnificent in every way. How would you sum it up?
Pippi Longstocking. It was a world turned upside down and full of possibility. And what would be the most fun next? And how can I have more fun today than I ever thought possible? Finally became the truth. It's a life of it's a message, really. I hated that people said, "Oh, it's made you who you are." It's like, you know what? Can you imagine the advantage I would have had if I hadn't had the shit kicked out of me? Fuck, give me a break. But in the end, when I really get to that place of, okay, did we agree to do this? Bravo, you guys, you did a great job. And so did I. Now what can we do that would be fun and freeing and joyful and spread that, be that.
Which is
Instead.
the message that
Yes.
you're spreading here, right?
Yes. Yes.
And if you were to give the listeners the next step, the next one piece of action, what can they do? What are we to do right now?
You need to be aware of where the stones are. Where are the rocks in your socks? What are the boulders on your shoulders? Through awareness, that's your first step, no matter what. Through awareness, then acceptance and action comes change. And unless you're willing to be aware of it and then accept it, you can't change it. And all you'll do is be a victim of it. So get out your pen and paper, write a piece of, I believe, ... And nobody else has to read it. Write whatever you think. Every single freaking thought, I don't care what it is, write it down. When you write it down, you get it out. Writing makes it real. And then you can get rid of it.
I love it. I will leave you with this final question. Alexis Ray, how would you like to be remembered?
Wow. I thought I would be ready for that one, Josh. How would I like to be remembered? As a colorful character who was born with a box cutter in her hand and learned how to use it later to inspire others how to do that.
So much artistic, creative, and loving brilliance in that, as in you, Alexis. Genuinely, thank you. I love you. You're beautiful inside and out. Thank you for showing up and opening up and sharing this tremendously impactful and helpful and stunning story of you and your journey. Pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And thank you, everybody, for tuning in today, whether you're on the live broadcast or on Apple, Google, or Spotify in the native podcast form. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, let me know. Leave a review. I love reading what you have to say over there. We're going to do this again. If you got something out of this, take a step forward, put something into the world, and keep us posted. We're going to do this again real soon. Until we do, thanks for tuning in. Go get them. All right. We are off the podcast, but still live on Facebook for a few. Alexis, how you feeling?
Very good.
Good. There's a, if you have a minute, there's a question that
Okay.
Tom Frederick asked that maybe you could shed some light on. He wrote, at this point, how do you balance emotion and the practice in business and friendships? Do you trust more on mostly objective truth, measurable stuff, or having developed a really keen emotional sense of who to trust, what to trust, or trusting yourself?
That's a great question, dude. That's a lot. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
Lately, thanks, Tom, for asking. There's been such a strong prevalence and presence and annoyance of narcissists. And so if I can at least minimize my world of a narcissist, I'm doing great. And if you prove out to be not one of those, we're going to get along great, because otherwise it's a futile and fruitless adventure. And so I've developed sort of a gnat's eyebrow sensitivity, like that's fine to be able to recognize behaviors in advance before I get too far into. And I used to trust everybody because I knew I was a trustworthy person, and it was so easy to be taken advantage of. I was a patsy and a mark for a lot of people for most of my life. So now I've had to learn how to be defensive without being offensive, hopefully. And
there's a lot of intuition that now is at the surface, right?
Yes, there is. And honestly, you're absolutely right, Josh. And ignoring that, even that smidgen and overriding it. I did that recently, and it cost me a lot. In fact, I've done it 3 times. It cost me a lot. financially, emotionally, literally physical property. I mean, it has cost me to ignore that, override it. And why would I do that? Because I listened to somebody else, or because I was afraid of how I would appear, so I still have people pleaser in me. I thought I was not trusting my own judgment. Again, every single time something goes wrong, it's that one thing. That one thing.
Wow.
Yep.
Whew. All right. A lot to process and digest here. Thank you so much, Alexis. We'll certainly stay in touch. And thank you, everybody, again, for spending your time tuning in. Let's keep the conversation going. So happy to see you all. So happy to see you, Alexis. And I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Bye, Josh. Thank you for having me.
My
Bye,
pleasure.
Steve.